in Amsterdam, I think it was like a week into it, I looked at myself in the mirror and it was like someone else looking at me, because everything I associated myself with, I was like removed from like the stem and like planted somewhere else, and I had to make all these things again.
Welcome everyone to LifewithLiza podcast. Our mission at LifewithLiza is to share people's stories and the challenges they have overcome, so those who are listening in can get the strength, the courage and the hope to be their better selves. Today we have a very special guest. She is a dear friend of mine, and also she's the person who always follows her dreams. She has lived in multiple countries. She has moved to Amsterdam in her teen years to pursue her education, lived in Singapore, Edinburgh. She started working in a company in Amsterdam and moved from being an intern to marketing manager in 3 years. Olya, welcome to the show.
Hi Liza, nice to be here.
I cannot believe we're doing this, and for everyone watching or listening, it's so crazy because I've known Olya now for 7 years.
Yeah, 7. Yeah.
And we have had so many deep conversations. So now just us having a deep conversation, but the one that would be recorded.
It's a bit weird, but it's all good, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I wanted to start our conversation with, why did you move to Amsterdam?
Yeah, well, I always knew I'm from Bulgaria originally, and I always knew that I felt that I didn't want to stay there. So when I was looking, when is the first time that I can kind of move out, university was like the most convenient time, I guess, for a lot of people, right? And I was researching, and just Amsterdam was like stood out. The university stood out. I watched some videos of students going through their day-to-day, and it looked like such a fun place to be, affordable as well. So that played a part, right, obviously, but yeah.
But I know that it hasn't been an easy move, because you also had to do a few things to actually move to Amsterdam and to actually push yourself in many areas. So what were the things that you actually had to accomplish?
Yeah, so in terms of getting accepted, English was not a problem for me, but mathematics, right? I was actually doing like a language high school back home with French. So math, we had like 1 hour a week, so it was still good, but it was like very basic, right? And I moved to economics major, so then it's like it's quite intense. So they needed to make sure I could handle that, and obviously at the time it was a big jump for me to make. Also mathematics and English, I was studying in Bulgarian, so I had to prepare for the exam, and that was an intense moment to do that. So, but I had the goal in mind, so it made it better.
Let's zoom into that, because you said you had a goal in mind, and actually it made it better.
Yeah.
So how do you actually, when you have, you mentioned that you went from having math 1 hour a week, once a week, to actually major in economics, which is a big jump. And for so many people, it could be unthinkable to actually even think of doing the jump. So what do you think helped you to define that goal and to also believe that you can do it?
Well, I think once I knew I wanted to go abroad and also do that major, in terms of it's business major, right? Mathematics was like a key part of it. So it was also for me, also when I actually joined university, I was in the first year, I also had to prove to myself that I can actually learn and do the same level as other people who majored and did all these mathematics courses throughout their whole high school, and for me it was just an intense 2 weeks of catching up, basically. But it was just like, so you know your criteria, you know what you need to do, and it's just like I knew that I had the North Star in my head, so that kind of kept me going, because I felt like, I think my intuition was like, this is the right move, so I just have to put all into it, and it was fairly fast, right? 2 weeks of intensity, like you can kind of, you see the end goal, the exam in my case, so it was easy to kind of push for 2 weeks and then you get it, and then like, oh, once I got the results that I passed and everything, I was like, wow, on my birthday as well. That was a nice gift.
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, it was like
the results given in your birthday.
Yeah, it wasn't. The thing it was not clear, but I remember I was like on my birthday, like just laying in bed, like I think, just having a rest and saying, okay, I should maybe check. And then I checked, and one university I think I missed by like so little, but then I got into University of Amsterdam, and I just found out on my birthday, so that was really special, obviously. But yeah, but then it's like the reward came quite quick.
Yeah, and I was also wondering because you were 19, you moved to Amsterdam to live completely on your own, to study in a different country, to explore everything, to make new friends. You didn't know anyone here. So what would you say, actually, what skills did you learn during this independence period?
Well, that's where to begin, I guess. It was exciting. I think that's good to mention, right? Because like when it's exciting, then it's easier to deal maybe with like being a bit afraid. Am I gonna be able to handle this, or being on your own, right? I was very excited, and I think I believe that things will work out. With those two emotions, it was like, okay, obviously there are a lot of hurdles and challenges, but in the end I think I also met really good people, and that helped a lot. But I guess your question was like what I learned.
What did you learn by actually moving to a completely different country, being exposed to completely new environment, have to make new friends, meet new people?
Yeah. Well, actually,
we've done it actually a couple of times.
Yeah, and I wanted to say before, so I think you know this, but like two things. If that's like, maybe this is a nice story for someone that's thinking about doing that. I myself thinking about, we will do that soon, right? Moving again. But before I even moved here for the first time, when I was still back at home, I would sometimes be walking around by myself, and I'll be like in an area maybe that I didn't know so much, and I would see like streets I didn't know, people I didn't know, and I would think to myself, oh, this is how it would feel like when you move to Amsterdam, kind of sit with this feeling, embrace it, right? So I was already preparing myself. Obviously it's completely different still, but I was preparing myself already back at home. And for me, when I arrived in Amsterdam, I think it was like a week into it, I looked at myself in the mirror and it was like someone else looking at me, because everything I associated myself with, I was like removed from like the stem and like planted somewhere else, and I had to make all these things again. So it's not like a skill, but I would say I learned with time. You form the habits in any new place, and you start to associate yourself with like the street that you walk in, the people that you meet, the place you get your coffee. So you slowly start to like build your life, even if in the beginning everything's super new and maybe a bit scary. With time you learn, and then like you embrace it, and it becomes a part of you, right? So I think like that the perspective is maybe a skill that I learned, that like it takes time, but you start forming the habits, and then you start feeling more comfortable. Okay, this is where I live, these are my friends, this is the coffee place, the bar I go to. So it's really like it's you then. So I don't know if that's helping, but
have you actually I was also wondering, have you ever had a regret about moving to Amsterdam? Have you ever regretted your choice?
Again, a deep question, right? It's not a regret, but we've talked about it. Obviously most of my family is back home, so it is a trade-off. I'm not regretting it. However, some celebrations or family occasions or traditions that all my life I'll be back home for, with time you go less and less, or maybe you miss something, you're there for something else. So it's more like there's a trade-off, and as long as the trade-off feels like you're on the good side of it, like you're gaining more than you're losing. I'm not saying, not being there with my family it's a, you know what I mean, like it's very sad, but it still feels right for me to be where I am and experience the things I'm experiencing. But so no regret, but the trade-off. There's sometimes nostalgia about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't regret moving to Amsterdam and everything that you have experienced.
No.
And everything that came after that.
Yeah.
And also, what would you say have been? I mean, I know there have been many challenges, but what challenges stood out as the ones that made you grow the most?
I need to think a bit about that.
I mean, if we let's define the time period around the time in Amsterdam, or maybe like the first year,
Yeah.
and it has been the most growth period, I would say, for us.
So, I definitely think what I realized was key for me personally, right, is my social circle.
Mm-hmm.
So back at home, obviously you have certain behaviors that I would do with my friends, or the way that we would meet up, or the reasons why we would meet up. So when you're a student, obviously a lot of things revolve around studying. So I think the first few months I was just studying by myself in my student accommodation. And at some point I realized almost everyone is going to the university and studying together and like forming almost like a group like that. So I realized I had to shift my old behavior to fit the fact that I wanted to make friends and be close to people. So that was like transition, right? Like studying in a big library and all of that is like it's like work a bit, right? You wake up, you get ready, you go study, then you go home, or, you know. So that was a big change in the way that like I realized, if I want to make the friends, then I need to also be flexible. I think that's a huge thing, right? You can't be stuck in your, this is what I want to do, and I still want to make friends, but I'm not willing to actually do anything about it or change anything about myself or adapt myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would be lonely at home, like studying for an exam for like 2 days straight, because obviously it was very intense, right? And then I realized, I actually feel quite lonely, instead of going to the library with people and like having that environment. So yeah.
But I think what you mentioned is so crucial, because you were saying that you realize that you have to adapt to the situation that you're in, and sometimes, and most of the times, your old ways of being at work are not applicable to the situation. And I think that just that exactly part is so crucial of why you should go abroad, why you should expose yourself to different situations. Because firstly, you also realize that the way you do currently things is not necessarily like everyone else does. Or maybe
you
just
find some funny things about yourself,
about yourself, about your culture, maybe some traditions or things that you do come from your family that you don't even realize, because you're constantly like with your family exposed, and everyone does it. And then you're exposed to completely new country, new people, and they don't do any of it, and you try to figure out how do you want to act. What of your old behaviors, which ones do you want to keep, which ones of the new ones would you like to adopt, and being so flexible and just like exposing yourself. That's why I find it so crucial to expose yourself constantly to new ideas and to new places, because that's where the growth lies.
No, absolutely. And I think university or like moving, let's say, at some point in your life, those are really good moments exactly for that, because you're anyway exposed to so many new things that I think you're more malleable than if you're like at home. Obviously there's nothing wrong with like staying at home. There's different ways to then grow or change, but it is easier to do that when you move or remove yourself from environments that you've been for years. So I think that's where you just have to adapt.
And as I mentioned, you moved a couple of times. So your first time was to Amsterdam, then you had Singapore, Edinburgh. So
then back to Amsterdam, which is, you feel it, right? It's still like, you're coming back to a place you've been to, but nothing's the same. So that's, again, I would say,
it's like constant. Life is like constant change, and you continuously you cannot stay too rigid, and
it's painful. Then it's really painful. It's like I think it feels painful, right?
Why do you think it feels painful?
Because the more you're like fixated on things, then when the change happens, and the change happens always, you feel it more rather than if you're a bit more fluid almost. That's why I think when when I was a student and so many changes were happening, everything was easier to accept. Once you start kind of, getting a bit more, not rigid, but a bit more set in your ways, it is more painful. But that's good. You have to be like, okay, yeah, this feels uncomfortable, it's good to do.
Yeah. But do you think adapting to a new environment is a skill that you get, or do you think it's as uncomfortable every time as it was the first time?
No, it's a skill. Like the first time is obviously going to be the most nerve-wracking, and I think it depends obviously how big the change is, like which part of the world or where you're going to. If you're going from from Europe to the US or from Europe to Asia, etc., or the opposite, maybe the change feels even bigger. Obviously with time and globalization maybe less so, but like on a personal level, right? And I moved from Eastern Europe to Western Europe, so there was still a lot of differences. But the first time is definitely the biggest one. And then you kind of learn, that's what I'm saying. I learned like it'll feel a bit weird, but once you like get your routines in, you're gonna start feeling like you have your feet on the ground. And that's like the perspective of doing it a few times.
And if someone just wants to now move from their home country and they're watching this video and looking at you for advice, what would you say, what advice would you give to someone who is moving in? What things they should do once they're in the country to help them settle or just make new friends?
Yeah, one very practical actually advice that I can give is that helped me a lot. It was also a few years ago, and obviously my phone wasn't that good, but I think it's good because you never know, is to have like a place in the city that you can go home from no matter what. For me, that was in Amsterdam, in like the city center. I knew like I had a place where if I would ever get lost or my phone would die, I knew how to get home from. So I would always have this like in the back of my mind, like comfort of that. So I think that's very useful. I also had it in other cities. That's just very practical.
Yeah, that's a very practical advice. But I think it also gives, as you mentioned, a sense of comfort, because if you're in a new city or somewhere and it can be so overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely.
So just having this space of comfort, knowing that, okay, I don't know the whole city, but no matter what happens, I know how to get to this point, and from that point, I know how to get home.
Yeah.
So it definitely gives, it's a very practical one. So if you don't want to get lost, you can learn how to get from this place to your home, and then you'll be safe.
You'll be fine. And back in the day, my phone was not reliable, so I think it was also a necessity that I had to have this in mind, right? But on the bigger question, like advice, right, is like, well, I guess be open, that what I said like before, right, like be open to changing your ways. I was, especially when I first moved, I was also very interested in people, in the sense like, anyone that I met, I was always like, oh, you're studying this, or you're working this, or you're from here. I was just very like kind of interested. So I think that like also helps if you're like trying to get out of yourself and your own, maybe think less about how you look to people versus like what can you learn from them. I think that also makes for like a better connection, because then you're not so worried about, am I looking the right way or talking the right way. You're more like, oh, this person seems very interesting, what can I learn from them? And then I think the conversation, the connection, and just maybe if you have a bit of anxiousness goes away because you're more focused on the other person. That helped me at least.
Yeah, that's also very practical advice. And I think actually people really like when you ask questions about them. So actually nobody even notices if you don't say something yourself or say
no, obviously don't do it like not an interview, but like a job interview where you just
ask the interviewer a question.
Yeah, no, it's really like comes from the place of like you're curious to learn, right? But again, I think that helps with if you have a bit of self-doubt or a bit worried, like am I gonna make friends and stuff, if you're being a bit more inquisitive and curious, then it's easier because you start naturally like, oh, you also like to work out. I love working out. Like, what should we do? Like, do you want to go together maybe?
Yeah.
And then you start making connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm almost giving myself tips for when I move now, by the way. So
It's very practical advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also wanted to ask you, when you joined the workplace, because I think it's a completely different thing, right? Moving to a different country, learning all these new things, being exposed to new environment, new people. But you're still a student, you're still studying, you do the thing that you've been doing in your high school or all your life basically, and then you enter a workplace, and I feel like it's a different vegetable to fry.
Yes. How I approached it, you mean?
Yeah, so how you approached it, what were the differences?
Yeah, well, how I approached it. So I think the same, so maybe a little bit of backstory would be good also for people applying now themselves. I think I applied for like 30 positions for an internship, right? So it's not even a full-time job. This was back in 2019, and I got rejected from so many of them, and I was accepting of the process. Obviously it's frustrating, but then I got like 2 interviews in person, and I went to one where just the office felt, for me personally, I was even coming out of the interview, I was like not feeling it. I wasn't like, didn't want to call my mom and tell her all about it, right? Like I was just, I can leave, I'm good. And then I went to the job in the office that I got, and just the environment spoke to me, and I mean in the end I got that job, and then I called my mom like, oh, this was great, like I loved it, and then I got the call that I got accepted, right, that I got it, and I literally started the week after. So I think it's the similarities, I would say, like again I went kind of open to it, like just excited to figure out, a bit imposter syndrome in some way, although it was an internship, right, like it's the first time you were working, so I think that's very normal. So many people feel that, like what is my value, how am I gonna help, what will I bring to the table, right? But then I was really lucky that everyone's quite open and my team was great. So I just started learning just about the company, the role, what was needed from me. The difference, I would say, obviously when you study, it's a bit more passive in the sense like you have a teacher that tells you this is what you need to study and this is what you need to do, this is how we're gonna test you. When you work, you have some basics, let's say you have the goal, the business result. How you get there, depending on the environment, is up to you, or at least there's some form of, well, you have to be proactive. If you want to be good and like, you know, leave your mark, etc., you need to be proactive. You can't necessarily wait. There's obviously places like you can wait and get told what to do, but depends on the person and what you like. I wanted to be more proactive, and that was a big difference though, because you go from being told study like chapter 1, the exercise 3, to like, we need to do this event, for example, or this campaign, and like, that's, how do it, how do you do it, like the manual is a bit, in my case, was not existent. So,
and how were you proactive? If someone wants to be more proactive, how does one approach this being more proactive thing?
Well, I think it all starts with like, if you fail, it's okay. Like, obviously, depending on the impact. Like, I really love my manager. Or she said, like, we're not surgeons. We're not like, we're not holding people's lives in our hands. So take it into perspective. Because I think to be proactive, you should not be afraid to fail, or at least afraid to like make a mistake, even if failure is not like, so like remove that from your head. Obviously take like educated guess. If you take like an educated guess, it should be fine. Even if you make a mistake, in the end it will be fine. It's not gonna end up in disaster, right? So I think that's the first one. Once you get that, I think you just leave room for like to be creative, I guess, and go for it. What I felt was like, if I, for example, I had to reach out to a lot of senior people to get my work done, and I was like, oh, who am I to reach out to like this vice president to ask him about this? Like, oh my god. But then in the back of my mind, I was like, if I don't do it in this job, then this job, I can't do this job. If this job doesn't get done, then it impacts this thing, and that impacts that thing. So I also had to like tell myself, you need to go and ask this person, because in the end they'll also be impacted, maybe indirectly along the line, but they will also be. So it's all like an ecosystem. You need to do your part and not be afraid to like, you know, push yourself as well. So
yeah. But also, I think that what you mentioned, that being proactive starts with not being afraid to fail, because usually when you're being proactive and ask for an extra task or doing a project, most likely you're not qualified to do the job.
You're stretching yourself.
And if you're qualified already to do the job, it's not necessarily the one where you'll find the most growth.
Yeah, or maybe the one where you're actually maybe, I mean, you're still proactive, but maybe it's not like where you'll be
the most proactive, because it's already in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So that's why, as you mentioned, it definitely the first step, you just not having that fear, because you are going outside of your comfort zone, you're asking for extra opportunities, and then you are taking extra responsibility on yourself. That
feels scary, but
and that's why it's great what you mentioned, is that in most jobs a bit of perspective helps so much, because it's not that we will fail or somebody will die. I mean, if you're a doctor, please
take this with a grain of salt.
somebody will die.
No.
But and then
this also helps with stress. That's what I was saying, because you can get stressed, but then the perspective helps.
But definitely. And then also, as you mentioned, and then, you know, once you are outside of your comfort zone, now you're exposed to all of these tasks that you were never doing before, like reaching out to a VP of the company, and of course for the first time it feels so weird and scary, and you're constantly thinking what they are thinking instead of you doing the job, and then you start seeing the bigger picture and seeing your own value, and actually once you do the job and you see that what you do is actually quite valuable, that people appreciate your job, you get a bit of confidence, but that just comes with incremental steps. And I was actually thinking, because you were saying when you just started and you had to contact the VPs, it was quite awkward for you and quite outside your comfort zone, whereas you now work with people like that on the daily basis. You don't find it. So I just wanted, if you had to contrast yourself when you just started the job and you now, what do you think would be the biggest skills that you gained throughout actually working at your job, and not necessarily the skills, you know, of your profession, because you work in marketing, so not necessarily obviously you grew in that area as you've been working, but also other skills like people skills, and what is the contrast maybe also in how you feel about yourself, or if you had to contrast these two people.
So this is like, it's a very good question. This is also where I'm still learning, right? I think when you first, it even goes back to what we said, the difference between like studying as a student to working, to maybe being higher up in the work, you know, like just seniority or experience, is like, why are we doing this? It's even being, you know, you want to achieve something. Is this the right way to achieve it? Is this tactic? Because a lot of people think that they have the right way to do something in their head, and they know. And for example, if you're more junior, then you're being asked like, do this. And I think with time, you start to learn, even with experience, right, in your profession, you start to learn this is not the right way actually to achieve this. For example, if you want to, I don't know, lose weight, or just a very random example, right? Like, and someone tells you, oh yeah, you should then eat more. You're like, actually, I don't think you should like work out and like eat in balance, etc. So you start learning like, this is the goal. Is this the right way to achieve it? Now from experience, you're like, oh, maybe not, maybe it's something else. So the why, like, why do you wanna, what are you actually trying to achieve? And you start, I think, probing a bit more, like trying to understand a bit more. Definitely it's just like, how do you handle yourself? I think also when I was, you know, earlier on, I was was very, I was more junior, so it's also kind of how it comes out, and you learn how to hold yourself in the sense like how to talk to more senior people, get what you need from them, etc. So
yeah. And also I think for me it was definitely how to conduct myself, and also I got way less panicky because in the beginning you do some mistake, you're like, oh my god, this is so
world
bad,
is ending.
the world is ending,
Yeah.
and everything seems so bad for some reason. Whereas now, after working for like more than 3 years now, oh my god, in a consultancy firm, I feel like somebody more junior now comes to me and says, we cannot make this deadline. I'm like, okay, why we cannot make it? This is fine, we will just move it. And there's less emotion attached to it, because you just have so much more experience, so you get that, as you mentioned, like also like bigger perspective.
It's the same like when you have like a teenager versus someone in our years versus someone 10 years older, is the perspective that you're like, maybe you're a teenager, something happens, like, oh my god, this is the end of the world, I can't do, like, and then when you're 20 plus, you're like, no, this is just a month of your life, like, you'll pass. And then you just start to gain that perspective. So I think that's why it's so good to remind yourself, like, putting this into like 5, 10, 20 years, is it really gonna matter? Or is it that, let's say, if you send a wrong email or CC the wrong person or move the wrong deadline or etc., like, like, what's the real impact? Is it just like what you feel right now, which is a bit of discomfort, pain, like you failed, or is it something more long term? Can you learn from it? I guess that's the biggest thing, right? Did you learn from it as well?
Because I think that's exactly the purpose of failure, just to learn. And that's the only way to learn. How otherwise can you learn?
Almost failing and realizing you almost failed, and then you're like,
oh, that was a good one.
Well, that's like
that's a lucky
that's the lucky round, right? Like, you didn't fail, but you almost did, but then you still see and you learn.
And you can reverse out of the situation and still not suffer the consequences. That was a good one. But also going back to what you just mentioned, that as a junior person, you just more of an executioner. You just do the things, and you need to learn also how to do them well, and that is just so important as well. Because otherwise, later on, how can you be managing anyone if you yourself don't really know how to get it done well? But then as you get more and more, you get more experience, you get also more curious, you start questioning everything, like, why are we doing this? What is the bigger picture? You see how it fits in, and think that they're just like so cool that happens. To spice up our conversation, I wanted to say that, so what do you think would be the difference between a woman starting a job and being somewhere new, and a man starting a job and being somewhere new? That's their first job. Do you think, like, from psychological perspective, it's being treated, they think of it differently, and also just like,
well, if we had a man now, this would be interesting to like ask, right? I mean, I can honestly just speak from my experience, right? But maybe, I don't know, do you think the anxiety levels are different? Because that's why I keep mentioning imposter syndrome, because even myself, I started as an intern, but then I was doing a job without a manager, basically by myself. Not by myself, I had a great team, but I mean, like, there was not like someone above to say, do this way, this way. So I was doing that for a while. Then I got promoted, etc., etc. But the first time I got promoted, I immediately got a rush of like, oh my god, now I'm getting like the actual title or like the money, etc. Is it actually like, does the company, like, am I bringing the value? So you get the imposter syndrome, which is really big. It's really good to be aware of that, and obviously I think everyone experiences it, right? So maybe there's a difference there. I wouldn't know, but maybe we're a bit more like, like, at least I had to push myself to like ask for more, even if you're not right now, if you're not like 100% of that role or that person, even if you're like 80%, you can already start stretching yourself and asking for it. I think that's commonly what I've heard is the difference between males and females, is that males would go for like roles that are already above what they could do, but they'll like just go for it, and we stop ourselves a bit more because we want to be like already have all the skill set to do it, and you don't need that as long as you're like open to learning, and you know, you can at least have the confidence that, because I think we learn through doing, right? So if you like have the confidence that this is like not completely out of your scope, but you can learn while doing it, then yeah. But that's a bit like separate from your question.
No, but that's just so great. And I was actually thinking, like, because this whole situation with when women, and like me myself personally, whenever you ask for more, you feel so bad. It's like, I mean, shouldn't I just be grateful with what I have? Why? Yeah. And this voice is very loud. It's like, and when somebody could tell you, no, you just started, you know, you're doing great, but it's too early. But actually, you get other data points, and that like, actually, I could do this, and I don't know why you're saying that I'm still should be at that position, and how to actually start asking for more and get that confidence that you can do it, and actually become more and more successful in positioning yourself in the right way, and also realize that other people also do it like that. I don't know if you have any advice in that area, because I know that you've been already now working for a few years, and you got yourself promoted also. So if somebody is watching now, and then I don't know, in their early 20s, they just started their job. So how would you approach? I would say, you know, first things first, check your environment, in the sense like, what's the feedback that I'm getting? Am I getting feedback from my team that I'm doing amazing, and you know, I'm growing so much, and I'm really like adding value? If you're getting that feedback constantly, and then you know, you can also speak to your peers, maybe other people that are doing the same job, getting their sense of, are we doing the same things? Or maybe someone a bit higher up from you, like start to kind of gauge yourself, but you know, don't take like just a superficial look and say yes, because you wanted that to be true. Like, be critical. Is it actually true? Or do I just want the promotion, but maybe I'm not there yet? But you know, like, there's a really big gap. So I think that for me, like, I did that, right? Like, I was taking that step, and I was always kind of looking like, am I doing what the person above me in terms of like the title would be doing? If yes, then okay, then if I've been doing this for long enough, or even for a while, the thing is, like, nobody's gonna give you a raise, nobody's gonna give you a promotion. You need to fight for it, right? Like, it's something that I learned, and I think a lot of people even older than me have struggled with this, is that it's still a business, and even if, let's say, you love your manager, they're still representing the business, and the business is always going to be better off if they pay you less. In reality, that's the case, right? Just monetarily. So don't take it personally. Don't take it like you're being, you know, this is only happened to you. No, it happens to everyone. That like, this is like a, you know, it's a back and forth to like reach that race or reach that level. And you do need to prove your value. Even if you've been providing value, you still need to prove it to get the promotion. It's not like just gonna be granted upon you. Like, you need to, that's at least how it was with me. Like, I had to still fight for it. And also, I think that you touched upon something that is so true, because I also used to think that when I do a great job, it's just gonna be automatically noticed, and then all this goodness just comes from heaven out of nowhere. Just you're like, oh my god, I'm just getting all these promotions and bonuses. It just like coming my way. I'm doing such a great job. But I think there's like another aspect to it. It's like just doing the great job that is your job, but also just being able to tell people what actually you're doing, and be able to position it in the right way, and be willing to have that uncomfortable conversation with the manager or whoever is responsible for your promotion or advancing at work. And actually, and I think the part where I'm struggling is like the back and forth, because I can bring up the courage and to actually start the conversation, but when somebody goes back at me and says why I shouldn't get, then it's hard for me to like say something back and like fight with them, because I think like I deserve it.
Yeah.
Why do I need to do that?
So I want to say two things on that actually. One is that obviously you're yourself and you're living your life, so you're noticing everything in your life, right? But then you have a completely different individual who is likely more senior. They have other things on their minds, other personal circumstances. So although if it's a good manager especially, they try to pay attention to you and think of those things, they're still having their own life. So you can't just assume that they'll notice that you want a raise or that you've reached the point to deserve a raise. You have to it's like any other communication relationship. You need to say it, right? And don't assume that they'll notice that you've already hinted at that or anything like that. You just need to say it. Another thing with the back and forth, what was really helpful for me is that I was prepared with I was preparing for those meetings, really thinking about my reasons, my research. Would it be just salary research or responsibility research? Even currently with the talent, there's lack of good talent. So even that is a point for you, that if a company loses you and you're really good and a good DNA fit, it's way more than just your role. They're losing a lot more than that. So if you kind of come prepared with all of that, you, even if you're not going through the list, but having just the confidence there is, you start saying what feels actually most true to you, but then you have all these other reasons as well. Yeah.
And also, if you now could give advice to you who's just started the job, what would you say?
I'm an intense person, so I think sometimes I was coming off a bit too intense to people. Obviously, you can't help you can't always not be perfect, but make the right impression to everyone. But maybe just being a bit more calm and thinking through. I never did anything too much or too bad, but just even the intensity when you're eager and passionate sometimes can come off a bit wrongly. So just taking a step back, taking a bit of a breath, and I guess that would be one advice. And believing in yourself, right? This is easy to say in perspective, but I did good.
I love it, because probably somebody from your work will be watching this
I
later.
know.
I did
Sorry,
good.
guys.
Yeah, I just also wanted to touch upon a different topic. So we talked about you living in different countries, being exposed to new experiences, your study experience. Then we touch also upon the work experience. Now you're really wondering what would be the third topic that I want to touch upon, but I wanted to touch upon relationships.
I thought it's like that, right? It's yeah, it makes sense.
So I was wondering, what would you say is a key to having a good relationship? And obviously there are different types of relationship. There's a relationship with yourself, there's a relationship with your friends, with your colleagues, also with your partner. So what would you say if we touch upon romantic relationships? So what would you say is a good, what is the key to having a good relationship with your partner?
Yeah, this is again an interesting question, right?
I mean, this is exactly how our conversations go when we talk, just in a bit less formal way.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's more fluid, right? But now I'm being, which is nice. I think it's a good way for me to also gain perspective on my own opinions, rather than journaling and etc. Well, it does always go back to, I would say, yourself in a sense, and this is where I can give maybe my point is communication, right? But then if I go to myself, it's when I was younger, I used to be I would always think, does this person need to hear what I want to say? For example, if we're friends or in a relationship and you did something that maybe hurt me, but I would wonder, well, you probably didn't do it on purpose, right? It was probably because you are in your own head, in your own life, and you didn't realize that this might not be nice to me. So then I would be wondering that for a while and keeping it to myself up until the moment where it'll just blow over, right? And then I'll be angry for no reason, and it will just become a bigger thing. So I think that's maybe personally for me, the thing that I learned the most is that say things in the moment. You don't need to, or you need to know that's why we're really good with each other, right? Because you do need to know what's bothering you. You can't just drop something at someone and it's a big question mark. You did this and I really didn't feel nice, but I have no idea why. Because that's very confusing for both of you, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to think through like why it bothered you. Maybe talk through or like write through, and then kind of go to the person and say, hey, this is like you did this, and I really felt bad because of this. What do you think? Can we change something? Or I'm just maybe there's not even anything to change. Maybe it was a one-off situation, but you still need to say it because it needs to get out of your system, right? So I do think communication. I would always put it first. I think you too, right? Yeah.
And I also wanted to say that I think it's twofold, and the first part is just understanding yourself. So having a good relationship with yourself, because you have to be honest with yourself to know how like you're feeling and why you feel like this, and be able to have this conversation with yourself. Because if you don't have it with yourself, I don't think you can have it with. You cannot create a good relationship with no one, like really, even with your friends or partners. I think with partners, just because you spend so much more time with them, that it will be more like a mirror, and it will show you all the unresolved issues
I was
in
going
yourself.
to say, this is why it's like, I completely agree with the point that you need to be ready, at least ready for because obviously you can have relationships and they can be good and they end for different reasons. No matter what, right? Like you always learn throughout the relationship. So I guess the basics are like to be open and like the communication. But then there's so much things that are gonna come up, so many issues like hidden, pain points or baggage that you were holding on to. That person is gonna maybe evoke some of those in you from the beginning or later on, or through like a random thing that they do, and all of a sudden it comes up. So it's again, you're never gonna be, I guess, truly ready, I would say, from my experience, but you're gonna learn through it.
And I think in just the second point is communication, and that's so key. Because I remember I was watching it was one of the episodes of Tom Billier, and he had a guest Lewis host, and he was also saying love is not enough, because you need to have communication skills. It's so easy to have a misunderstanding, and you need to be able to distill what, as you mentioned, what is bothering me, why is it bothering me, how do I now have the conversation with the person to describe it in the best way, and actually
that they will understand.
So how I do that, and of course I think what's key is not to keep something in yourself that's bothering you, so that it doesn't like boil up and explode into a huge thing, but also just like going through the steps, and of course being with a person who is willing to also listen to it and be appreciative of you like sharing it. It's like great that you're sharing that, and not seeing this as a personal attack on them or anything wrong that they are doing, but just you are being vulnerable and you actually sharing something for the good of the relationship.
Actually that's the last thing that you said is a good point. Your partners together, right? I think especially when I was younger, and you do see this also culturally, is that it's almost like you're not partners together, you're almost like playing with each other. Though there is some of that energy in the sense like, it's always two people, it's not like you're one, right? But you're together trying to figure it out, what works for both of you, not only one and then the other one suffers. It's not like if I say something that's bothering me, but maybe that's so ingrained or like it's super important for the other person, like can I then live with that, or to what extent, or how can we work around it. But I think it's quite culturally like the case to like play with each other and all these mind games and stuff. So I think that's a mentality or part of life. I think you also kind of passed through that. I definitely had a big moment with all of that, but then I learned like actually what the kind of relationship I want personally means we need to be partners and work together rather than not against each other but to each other, right? Like
And I think that's actually the coolest part about being in a relationship, because it's you're interconnected. So being the interconnected part, it's like the first layer is being dependent, and then being independent as a person, being able to do whatever you want to do by yourself, and then the interdependency, and that's the coolest part because you actually reach so many synergies together, and actually you as two people can do and achieve together so much more. You just view, for example, the problem, it's like not the problem is in between us, but there's a problem us together, and we can forcefully like solve it and approach life, and I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Share that, yeah.
To share
I think to add to that, for me, for that to be the case, so to move away from the dependent side is like, you know, like there's a saying like two halves make a whole, or like you're my other half, and I don't like that. Like with my boyfriend, we talk about it, that we're not halves, like we're a whole by ourselves, because like you live and you die by yourself, right? Like, and everything else is like a bonus that you get to experience. But if you treat yourself as a whole, like a half, you're cutting so much of your life and you're becoming dependent on another half. But if you're a whole and the other person is a whole, you make so much more, you know, like it just adds so much more to your lives, where obviously you're gonna have to do some, how do you say, like, you know, and you're not always going to get it your way, as you need to have some, what am I, the word I'm searching for, do you know? Anyway, like, yeah, doesn't matter. But you know, you're not always going to get what you want exactly, right? So you need to compromise.
Compromise.
That's the word I'm searching for. But that's different than like being a half. It's like you're still your own person. You're still whole. Obviously, in a good relationship, you're going to be, you know, getting things from the other person and changing your character. Because I mean, I admire things in my partner, and because of that, I'm also with him, right? Because it's also like I want to learn from those things and get them also myself. So you always have that, but then you're still a whole.
You know, I read recently a very interesting thing. I have not even told you that yet, but I think you will really find it interesting. I don't know how true it is, but basically it said that originally we're attracted to a certain person because they actually have something, like some characteristics or characters that we actually want or see ourselves having. And if we actually don't do the work and don't work on ourselves to actually become better at those things, we actually come to resent our partner.
Wow, yeah, I think...
And that hit me like, oh, what?
I have noticed that in myself, and even when I was younger, I was definitely being attracted to a certain kind of men. And I knew, even because I had that introspection, I guess, like I knew even which qualities, because I wanted to be like that. Or, you know, so I do agree, at least on a personal level, that's the case. But it is very interesting, right? Like that if you don't grow yourself, obviously, you know, if you grow a lot but the other person is not growing, at some point there might be a really big gap where you no longer speaking the same language or having the same experiences, and that can kind of end the relationship. So it is important to work on yourself on the things that matter, which might match what your partner has, right?
And how would you actually, what is a good relationship for you? Because we were mentioning a good relationship needs communication, so how do you personally define a good relationship?
Actually, you helped me with that, right? Like it's more like, and even through other not people, but actually a show, if more of the time you're smiling than not, it's probably a good relationship, right? If you're feeling energized or better, or like, I would say at home, actually. For me, the feeling feels at home, but like in a good way, right? Like I feel like a lot of the times, quite honestly, right, when you're around people that maybe you don't know so much, let's say you're in a bad mood and then you're around people that you don't know so much, you kind of tend to put the mask on, oh, I'm great, like I'm happy. And then you go home, you like kind of can let go and allow yourself to not feel good. I think for me, like with my boyfriend, is like, oh, I don't feel like that mask on. I really feel like at home I can be myself, and it's allowed and it's okay. And I'm not being pushed to like always be happy or like fake that anything. So I think that's, that feels good, right?
Like you can be yourself as if you were by yourself, but actually you can share this
experience.
Also the most vulnerable sides of yourself. You feel safe sharing the most vulnerable parts of yourself also for somebody else who could just like judge you or hurt you or do anything, and you feel comfortable doing that, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's scary in the beginning, definitely, right? Like, because maybe if you've never had like a serious relationship like that, you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? Obviously it's quite scary, but if you take that step and it goes well, it's still scary for a while, and maybe even every time, but like you kind of always get that reinforcement that it's okay and it's allowed. And then, I actually think, at least from my perspective, from my experience, like the moment where I felt closest to my boyfriend, we talk about it, is like if we had a little bit of, not a fight, but a little bit of a misunderstanding, and then we have to sit down in a line and talk through it, that's the moment where we feel the closest, because it's almost like, okay, we're like aligned right now, right?
Yeah.
Versus even if you're good, but maybe your mind is in other things, which is completely normal, right? Like your life there's so many things to pay attention to, but then you kind of like, you're still aligned, but maybe like everyone's paying attention to different things. But if you have a bit of misunderstanding and you talk through it, and you're like, then you align, and it feels like the closest you are. So
beautiful. Before I ask my last question, if somebody wants to connect with you, where can they find you?
My Instagram, which I'm taking a detox right now, but I do think that's probably the easiest way, right? So it's just my name. Should I say my name?
You can say it. I'll also put it.
It's just Olya Andonova. That's my full Instagram name.
When Olya comes back from detox, she'll answer to you.
You can find me there. Just don't get offended if I'm not answering.
And my last question would be, if you had, imagine you now being 80 or something years old, and you would look back on your life and on the things that you still up to this point have not done yet, and you would say, I really wanted to do this, but I wish I could have done this and I haven't done this. What do you think would be the thing for you? What is something that now your soul craves to do so much, and you know already that when you would be 80 you would regret?
So I did it, or
you didn't do it?
I didn't do it yet.
Yes.
But by the time I'm 80, I would have wanted to do it.
Yes, and you would regret that you didn't do that.
Yeah. Oh.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, it's just like, it's also, I don't think it's a singular activity. I think it's a few things. So I'm just gonna be true to myself and answer it that way. It's one is like, I guess I don't know. Let me think. But
there's no pressure. There's just a few cameras here.
A few. I guess being true to yourself is like kind of, maybe it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it does take time even now, like to accept myself and kind of follow my intuition. And I think only good can come from that for me personally. So I don't want to not listen to my intuition, and when I'm 80 I'm like, oh, I made all these decisions following other people's opinions or other things, not to myself and my intuition. I think even, because obviously I am quite an ambitious person, and I have a lot of ideas for what I want to achieve, but if that doesn't come from my intuition, then it's not going to be good, even if I achieve a lot, right? And I'm like, maybe grow a lot professionally. If my intuition isn't in it, if my heart isn't in it, then it wouldn't really matter. So I guess what I wish for myself that I haven't done, or I'm doing to keep doing, is to follow my intuition. It's a very long way to answer that, but do you think that's
I think it's a good I think it's a good one.
I haven't not done it, but to keep following my intuition and to have the courage to sometimes do hard things, I'm sure.
Beautiful. Well, Olya, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you here. I hope you enjoyed this interview, guys. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.